This is Babis Anagnostopoulos, comforting his mother-in-law this week. Her daughter, his wife, murdered just a few weeks before. But now police say that he was the murderer who nearly concealed his crime. Caroline's murder in May shocked Greece. Her husband describing a violent gang who he said had tied up the parents, threatened their baby child and then killed his wife.
Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά. Σε κανένα να με τύχει. Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά. Τα παιδιά ξέρουν τη δουλειά τους, θα τους πιάσουν και αυτό που πέρασα εγώ και η οικογένειά μου και η οικογένεια της γυναίκας μου να μην το περάσει ξανά κανείς ποτέ.
On a tragic night, Haralambos Babis Anagnostopoulos, a 32-year-old aviator, and his 19-year-old spouse, Caroline Crouch, were awoken by three masked assailants who broke into their two-story maisonette in the suburbs of Glyka, Greece, at 4:30 a.m. on Tuesday, 11th May 2021. The intruders, armed with handguns and hiding their faces with hoods, quickly overpowered Babis, binding him and blindfolding him with duct tape. Babis and Caroline suffered a devastating home invasion. The assailants, who spoke with Greek and Albanian accents, broke into their residence, shattering the peaceful atmosphere of their home. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the house, sending Caroline's heart racing with every creak of the floorboards. The intruders restrained and blindfolded Babis, demanding to know where they had hidden their money. Caroline was petrified and pleaded for mercy, insisting she did not know what they were referring to. Despite her protests, the attackers continued their ruthless search. As the attackers ransacked the home, searching for valuables, Caroline's infant daughter began wailing. Caroline tried to shield her from the chaos, overwhelmed by fear and urgency. She desperately sought an escape route, but every potential exit seemed to lead to a dead end. The intruders brandished a firearm near their 11-month-old child, eliciting a scream of anguish from Caroline. Meanwhile, Babis, blindfolded and powerless, struggled against his restraints, but the rope around his neck tightened, causing him to lose consciousness intermittently.
Ήταν τόσο σκληροί. Δηλαδή δεν καταλάβαιναν από τα παρακάλια σας, από αυτά που τους λέγατε.
Τις οικεσίες σας όλα αυτά τα πράγματα. Μας έδεσαν και από εκείνο το σημείο και μετά δεν τους είχαμε πει ήδη που είναι τα χρήματα. Δεν ξέρω.
Eventually, the assailants discovered a stash of money concealed within a Monopoly board game box. However, their greed was insatiable, and they proceeded to gather jewelry and other valuable items. Tragically, the intruders took Caroline's life in the brutal attack. Babis, still bound and blindfolded, was left to confront the horrifying reality of his wife's murder. The assailants vanished into the night, leaving behind a scene of devastation and a family shattered by grief. The ensuing silence was suffocating, broken only by Caroline's labored breathing, which ultimately ceased. The next morning, the police arrived to find Babis still restrained and Caroline's lifeless body. Babis recounted the traumatic events of the previous night, struggling to come to terms with the horror he had endured. Their 11-month-old daughter, who had been sleeping nearby, remained unharmed, but was now an orphan.
Όταν συνειδητοποίησε ότι η γυναίκα σου δεν βρίσκεται στη ζωή.
Όταν με έλυσαν οι αστυνομοί. Όταν ήρθαν οι αστυνόμοι μέσα και με έλυσαν και έβγαλαν από το κεφάλι μου τα δεσμά.
Και η κορούλα?
Η κορούλα μου ευτυχώς δεν έχει χτυπήσει, πήγε στο νοσοκομείο προληπτικά και ευτυχώς είναι καλά.
Upon regaining consciousness, he found that the intruders had departed, leaving a scene of chaos in their wake. The only sound that filled the air was the sorrowful cries of his infant daughter. Babis's thoughts raced, and he realized he needed to act swiftly. He remembered that the intruders had taken all their saved money, but he also recalled that Caroline's parents had gifted them 50,000 euros, which they had concealed within the home. Fueled by a surge of adrenaline, Babis managed to maneuver towards his mobile phone, using his nose to dial emergency services. Once the call connected, he urgently called for help, pleading with the operator to dispatch an ambulance and provide his location. He also requested police assistance, hoping they could apprehend the intruders. His voice trembled with fear, yet he understood the necessity of swift action to protect his family. The operator's composed voice on the other end served as a beacon of hope, and Babis recounted his ordeal, praying for timely assistance. As the operator endeavored to make sense of Babis' muffled utterances, the clock continued relentlessly ticking, indicating that an hour and a half had elapsed since the intruders had invaded their residence. At precisely 6 a.m., the first responders arrived, hastily ascending the front steps to gain entry into the home. What awaited them was a scene of utter devastation. The living area and kitchen had been thoroughly ransacked, with drawers left ajar and emptied, whilst clothing and personal items were strewn across the floor. Amongst the disorder, an open Monopoly box rested on the ground, a poignant reminder of the stolen cash. A security camera, which had been forcibly detached from the wall, lay abandoned on the couch, its memory card conspicuously absent. However, the most heart-rending sight was the lifeless form of the white and brown husky puppy, which had been tragically strangled by her leash, suspended from the staircase. Babis, still bound and gagged, was found on the main bedroom floor, his eyes and mouth obscured by duct tape. Caroline's motionless body lay face down on the bed, a victim of the savage assault. The first responders promptly liberated Babis from his bindings and administered medical care. As they endeavored to revive him, the full magnitude of the horror unfolded. The intruders had left behind a trail of destruction and death, irrevocably altering the lives of the family. Fortunately, the 11-month-old infant was discovered unharmed. Upon the arrival of the first responders at the scene, they observed the infant daughter positioned next to Caroline's lifeless form, crying and clapping in a desperate effort to awaken her mother. Despite her evident distress, the child appeared to have been physically unharmed. The officers promptly ensured the infant's safety and initiated inquiries with Babis regarding the circumstances that had led to the tragic incident. Still in shock, Babis detailed the movements of the intruders, indicating that they had gained entry into the residence through a basement window after their attempt to break in through the rear door had failed. Officers meticulously examined the evidence and pursued various leads. They uncovered several significant clues left by the intruders, including a torn piece of fabric that had become ensnared in the basement window and a suspicious footprint that had been located outside the residence. As the investigation advanced, the police endeavored to reconstruct the events of that tragic night, resolute in their mission to bring the offenders to justice and offer closure to Babis and his family. The inquiry revealed that Caroline's demise had resulted from a prolonged and violent assault, which had lasted approximately 6 minutes. The contusions present on her body had indicated a fierce confrontation, whilst the injuries to her lips and tongue had implied the involvement of sharp implements. Despite the brutality of the attack, there had been no indications of sexual violence. A police spokesperson had characterized the incident as a despicable crime, executed by individuals who had displayed a complete disregard for human life. Law enforcement had been able to produce a composite sketch of one of the suspects based on Babis's account. The individual had been described as an overweight, dark-skinned male of considerable height. Additionally, the police had identified the firearms utilized in the assault, which included a black pistol and a silver Colt. The police managed to reconstruct the sequence of events from that tragic night. They had found that the intruders had been surveilling the family for an extended period, biding their time for an opportune moment to attack. The police had remained resolute in their commitment to apprehend the offenders and provide a sense of closure for Babis and his family. Law enforcement pursued fresh leads, including a possible link between the assailants and Caroline's close acquaintances. They uncovered that Caroline's ability to resist and defend herself might have been enhanced by her expertise in kickboxing, which ultimately led the intruders to eliminate her permanently. The surveillance footage captured a suspicious dark vehicle and motorcycle circling the couple's residence on the morning of the homicide, which the authorities successfully identified and traced to a nearby area. In the meantime, Caroline was laid to rest on the Greek island of Alonos, a significant site where her parents had first fallen in love. The police continued their inquiries with Babis and others, harboring suspicions that the gang might have received information regarding the couple's concealed assets. New evidence indicated that the intruders could have been surveilling the couple's activities before the assault. During their investigation, law enforcement officials discovered that Georgi Haralambos, a 36-year-old Georgian national, had a prior record of violent offenses. His method of operation had been consistent with the burglary at the residence of Babis and Caroline, where he and his associates had accessed the property through the rear windows. Vili's connection to several break-ins throughout Athens, including 3 incidents in the vicinity of Babis and Caroline's home, had raised significant concerns. Authorities had found that Vili's group had pilfered cash, jewelry, and various other valuables, frequently employing intimidation and force. The inquiry had further indicated that Vili's accomplices had remained at large, prompting the police to initiate a manhunt for their capture. As the evidence against Vili had accumulated, investigators had begun to reconstruct the circumstances surrounding Caroline's unfortunate demise. The police had remained dedicated to ensuring that all individuals involved would face justice, thereby honoring Caroline's memory and providing her family with the closure they had sought. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement shifted their attention to a local Albanian organized crime syndicate. They had refined their list of potential suspects from 100 down to 10 individuals identified on the red list. Babis had been presented with photographs of each suspect, although no additional information had been disclosed at the time. Despite their diligent efforts, the case had continued to elude resolution, leading to growing public frustration. Media coverage had included insights from experts who had asserted that this was not a typical case. Had it been, it would have been resolved by then. Investigative findings indicated that no DNA or fingerprints had been recovered from the crime scene, complicating the pursuit of justice further. The police had remained resolute in their commitment to apprehend Caroline's murderer, yet the absence of evidence and leads had proved to be a source of frustration. They had been determined to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of those responsible. As the investigation progressed, a significant development occurred on June 17th, 37 days after Caroline's brutal murder. A modest memorial service had been held in her honor on Alonissos, during which detectives had approached Babis discreetly, requesting that he accompany them to Athens. They had possessed new information and had urged him to assist in identifying a suspect. Upon further scrutiny, inconsistencies had become apparent between Babis's narrative and the available evidence. The alleged entry point, a basement window, had been found to have been too small for the assailant, as described by Babis. Neighbors had reported no signs of disturbance or cries for assistance, which contradicted Babis's assertions regarding a ransacked home. The absence of fingerprints, DNA evidence, and conflicting data from security cameras had further intensified suspicions. Additionally, Caroline's smartwatch had provided pulse readings that indicated she had experienced significant physical and mental distress before her heart ceased to function. These revelations prompted investigators to reassess Babis' role in the incident, leading them to consider the possibility that he may have had a greater involvement in Caroline's murder than previously believed. The detectives had begun to suspect that Babis might have been more involved in Caroline's tragic demise than initially thought. As investigators delved further into the case, they uncovered that Caroline had attempted to book a hotel room for herself and her daughter on the evening of her murder. A text message she had sent to a friend had indicated her intention to leave Babis. Additionally, police analysis of Babis's fitness app data revealed that he had been active during the period he had claimed to have been restrained. Further inquiries had indicated that Babis had a pattern of manipulation and control. Caroline's diary entries revealed a tumultuous relationship, with her having expressed doubts about her marriage and having contemplated separation from Babis. The couple's online presence had portrayed an image of a blissful and romantic partnership, concealing the underlying issues. Babis's controlling tendencies had been evident from their unconventional wedding, where they had forgotten traditional Greek festivities. This behavior had intensified over time, leaving Caroline feeling trapped and uncertain about the future of their marriage. Detectives had begun to theorize that Babis' need for dominance might have contributed to the tragic outcome of Caroline's life. They had suspected that Babis' desire for control had ultimately led to Caroline's demise. In this case, they uncovered that Caroline's relationship with Babis had been far from ideal. Initially, she had been captivated by him, but Caroline had found herself ensnared in a pattern of manipulation and control that had been imposed by Babis. He had distanced her from her family and friends and had even exerted control over her financial matters. Caroline's diary had disclosed an emotional confrontation with Babis, during which she had articulated her wish to leave him, yet had felt constrained by her pregnancy, which had made her feel trapped. Following the birth of their daughter, Caroline's diary entries had taken on a tone of increasing despair. She had expressed feelings of distress and a desire to escape from Babis, but had felt unable to do so due to the circumstances. The diary also referenced a property in Athens, which had appeared to be a point of contention in their relationship. Communication records had revealed contentious exchanges between the couple, highlighting the dysfunction that had characterized their bond. When presented with the evidence, Babis had emerged as a primary suspect in the murder investigation. After an extensive 8-hour interrogation, he had ultimately broken down and confessed. However, his account had been riddled with inconsistencies. He had asserted that their disputes had been solely about their daughter and claimed that Caroline had been intent on leaving with the child. Babis had further alleged that Caroline had been physically aggressive towards him, pushing and striking him. Nevertheless, investigators had harbored doubts about the veracity of Babis' confession, suspecting it to have been a carefully constructed narrative aimed at distorting the truth. As Babis's emotions had become increasingly unmanageable, his ability to make sound judgments had deteriorated, culminating in a horrific crime. In a moment of uncontrollable anger, he had strangled Caroline, suffocated her with a pillow using his full weight, and taken her life in a calculated manner, all while their 11-month-old child had been present. In a misguided effort to conceal his actions, Babis had orchestrated a fake home invasion, even going so far as to kill the family dog, Roxy, to lend credibility to his ruse. He had then positioned his child beside Caroline's lifeless form, had bound himself with rope and duct tape, and had awaited the arrival of law enforcement. Although he had attempted to deflect responsibility onto Caroline, alleging that her behavior had provoked his instability and aggression, Babis' actions had been ultimately deemed unjustifiable. In May 2022, he was charged and had been convicted of premeditated murder, obstruction of justice, providing false statements to authorities, and animal cruelty. This case had been remembered as the murder that fooled the world, serving as a poignant reminder of the dire repercussions of uncontrolled emotions and the necessity of holding offenders accountable for their deeds. A toxic relationship turned deadly, shattering lives and revealing a sinister truth. Obsession, manipulation, and murder exposed the dark shadows within. The facade of perfection crumbled, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more true crime stories. Share your thoughts on what drove the perpetrator to commit such a heinous crime. Your opinion matters. Like, share, and comment below. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for updates.